Hi, everyone. I'm David Marinak. Welcome to the Repackaging Revolution. Today's guest is Greg Lewis. Greg is with American Phoenix. This is a guy that came from banking and entered into a really nasty, dirty world of rubber compounding and chemical mixing. I know you're going to love it. The story's inspiring, and he's very cool, too. Thanks. Greg Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I got to go there. Notre Dame, Northern Illinois. I mean, come on, Greg.
I know.
It's got to be tough. I mean, I'm seeing the memes all over now. Hey, by the way, I'm a Notre Dame fan. So I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania, Joe Montana area. Yep. I mean, that whole bit. I mean, I get it. And oh man, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And guys like us have to bear the brunt of all the other haters, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, my three brothers are haters. I think that's one of the reasons I ended up there, because just different from what they were thinking. And I didn't live that one down last Saturday very easily.
Dude, so. There's so many memes going. Did you see the one with Rudy wearing the instead of having the Notre Dame jacket, Letterman's jacket, it's Northern Illinois Letterman's jacket? Oh, that's brutal. All my buddies in my baseball fantasy league are showing that to me, Greg, and I'm like, yeah.
When they stick you at number 5, and you have a big game, and and they tell you how easy your schedule is and everything else. Watch out.
I know.
You're in for a fall.
Well, and they've always, unfortunately, it's always had a bullseye. Notre Dame's always had a bullseye on their back anyhow. You either love Notre Dame or you can't stand. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's okay. We still have a bunch more games. We still can be competitive. I'm just, the glass is half full, my friend. So let's go with it.
Maybe this is a cop-out, but I always say, that's what's great about college football.
True.
You just don't know who's going to win from week to week, and there's always major upsets.
Big time. I know, which makes it fun. So, hey, let's dig in. I'm excited to kind of learn a little bit more. I had the opportunity to meet one of the gentlemen that works for you, and he had said, hey, Greg would be a great interview for the podcast. And I really love the podcast setting because it just allows you and me to just kind of chat, learn about people and their businesses, learn about really what got them there. But at the end of the day, you're in the packaging space and use and consume and are part of packaging. I am too, and I know a lot of our listeners are. So let's just dig in. Let's get going.
Sounds good.
So take us back at the very beginning. You have this chance encounter with Alex, and Alex is if I understand correctly, the career entrepreneur, always got new ideas, the visionary. Is that a fair statement?
That would be an understatement. The two of us are basically polar opposites in that sense. I mean, He's the big idea guy. Forget the details. I'm the operating guy. I live in details.
Yeah.
Which, if it works, it's great, but it's a lot of work because we both have different instincts.
Oh, yeah.
But I met Alex about 41 years ago in a plane in O'Neill, Nebraska, where he had an interest in a center pivot irrigation company.
Wow.
At that time. And so that would have been... Well, what was I've been about 23, 24 at that time.
Right.
And from that point forward, our paths crossed several different times as he had other investments and every opportunities that he was involved in. I mean, we have done everything from Blimpie's restaurants in Poland and the Czech Republic to mobile CAT scanning machines to we have a current investment in a company that uses plasma for cleaning microchips in the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
We've had oil wells in eastern Wyoming. I mean, you name it, he's done it.
That's so cool.
So basically, my career, I had 15 years in banking. Spent the first year out of college in St. Louis, Missouri, when the banks used to have training programs. I was in that for a year, decided to come home, then went to work for an S&L back when the S&Ls was a pretty rocky time to be.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of the few survivors. They ended up getting an executive out of Detroit area originally.
Yeah.
And he'd been through it with another S&L and helped save that S&L, eventually turned it into a bank.
Yeah.
But so I spent 3 years there. I think the biggest experience there was I worked in a workout division. The previous, when the S&Ls were giving lending powers, they were basically, you had the Federal Home Loan Bank board regulating these guys, and they were doing commercial loans across the country.
Sure.
Got in a lot of trouble. So I spent a good year in the workout department over there, which pretty much set me up for the rest of my career in a lot
100%. 100%.
And then from there, I made a stop at Marquette Bank, which was owned by the Polk family, which are the owners of the Minnesota Twins, a prominent family.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And then they sold out our division to U.S. Bank, how I ended my career there.
And U.S. Bank still is based in Minneapolis, right?
That's what I thought.
They have a presence here in Cleveland where I'm at. Not as big. I know they did a big rollout, but I think they scaled that back. Still around, but I just remember they came guns blazing, and then they sort of scaled back. But again, that's all part of the banking business, which you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I actually flew through. I've spent more and more time as I fly with Delta through Minneapolis, and I love that airport. I love the whole setup. It's just the more and more I'm in Minnesota and anything, it's just a great town. So what a great place to grow up in.
Yeah, Delta. I mean, if you live here, it seems like they own about 80% of the gates. So anywhere you're going Delta.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good and bad.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, we had that with United here in Cleveland for a while because it was Continental, and then United and Continental merged. So for a while there, we were, one of their little micro hubs.
Right.
It's wonderful when it works, but like you said, it's also a curse when they decide to we're not going to be there anymore. So sorry. So crazy. Well, let's dig in. Let's talk a little bit about American Phoenix. I really am fascinated for the simple fact that, in my career in the packaging space over the years, and especially being here in Ohio, an hour from here in the Akron area is the big rubber compounders that we worked with in the past, which I'm sure is right in your wheelhouse.
Right.
And so much of that over the years of dealing with different types of, and I know we'll get to this in part 2, if you will, because you guys are doing something really brilliant in the custom weighing division. For lack of a better way to put that, I'll let you go into that. But tell us or take us into that rubber compounding space when you got into it, and give us a little idea of kind of where American Phoenix fits, if you will, in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
This company was formed in 92. And again, it was Alex and a partner of his who was a former 3M exec, a guy named Clem Nelson. Kind of co-founded this thing. Alex had he knew of a user of Custom Mix Rubber. It was a company that was trying to recycle rubber, and they had the magic potion to create a usable product, supposedly. And they were up on the Iron Range in Minnesota, which is not the most ideal place if you want to distribute anything. It's a bit out of the way from everywhere.
Right.
And they were having some problems, and Alex was familiar with these folks, and he thought, well, they could use world-class mixing. And the former Uniroyal plant in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which was now owned by Michelin at that time.
Yeah, right.
I had just closed the plant. And he says, well, they've got to have world-class mixing in a tire plant. So he and his partner got together, talked to some of the city officials, talked to the folks at Michelin, and then talked to the eventual landlord that bought the property. So we got started in that old tire facility in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, trying to make rubber for this individual on the Iron Range. To get going, just to keep going, we continued to buy or do some work for Michelin. We did some other things for 3M, a lot of different things, just to kind of keep the doors open and get started.
In the rubber compounding space, right? Okay, got it.
And what happened was, we eventually ended up with that was a 2 million square foot facility. And today we have 1 million square feet of it.
Wow.
Originally, it was just the rubber mixing division. Department is where we got started. I joined them about 5.5 years into it. Now, I was familiar with it because, again, my path intertwined with Alex off and on.
Right. So you were familiar with a
little bit. Yeah. But again, as a banker, you get to see a little of a lot of different companies. You never really know the details of anything.
Well put. Well put.
For me, I guess when I came over is back in 98, I'd had my boss's boss at that time was frustrated because there used to be a big get-together every quarter where the whole division got together at the old Marquette Bank building for a happy hour and just kind of a gathering and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And the division that had the most past due loans had a foot the bill for the thing. And there was like 4 divisions. And Alex.
How do I know where this is going, Greg?
So Alex just happened to, again, an entrepreneur, right? They're always kind of winging it. And so he was right on the borderline of being late. He actually got the check in on time, the payment, before the past due period. But it was the day before. The clerk got the check and put it in a drawer for the weekend, which put it over the past due, and which put us over as a division.
Yeah.
And my boss was embarrassed that he had to pay for the party that quarter. And he came down on me like,
yeah,
you can imagine.
I bet.
At that point, after 15 years in banking, I kind of realized that I was ready for a change. Alex had constantly talked to me about joining him, but there was never an offer, right? I mean, it was always talk.
Yeah.
And I figured over time, he just wants me to pay his overdrafts. He's just buttering me up, right? So finally I went to him. I said, listen, now or never. I'm ready to make a change.
Right.
I don't, it's either going to banking, I'll be gone for another 3-4 years, or now's the opportunity. And he was serious, talked to his partner, and they hired me in January of 1998. So that's when I joined the company.
And what did they bring you in as?
There's not a lot of structure at this point.
I was going to say that's
Alex.
Yeah.
One lady doing bookkeeping at the plant, and that's about it, right?
No kidding. How about that?
So it's kind of cool. Whatever needed being done, you do it.
Right.
And again, because of my background in the banking, I did take over the banking relationship.
Right.
That's how I brought in. Now, what he did tell me when I came in, and he said, you're going to be useless for me for 3 years. You won't even know where the bathroom is for the first 3 years. I'm looking at him like, well, why'd you hire me?
Exactly.
He was right. I mean, it took, you got to get in, you got to understand things. And finally I kind of adjusted. I used to spend a lot of time in our plant. It's about a hour and 45-minute drive from my home in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. And I'd go down there every Thursday. And it was important because I get to meet the people, get to understand what the business was all about.
Sure.
If I'd been in town, I would have learned how to run the equipment too. I mean, it's something you got to do.
Right.
But that's how I got started in it. So I tell people, just because a clerk put a check in a drawer for a week is how I ended up here. So
did it take you 3 years to catch wind of the viability of the business and Alex's vision?
Truthfully, when I came in, I was hoping to get 2 years under my belt.
Yeah.
And then I could be marketable in industry as opposed to just banking. It was my escape from banking. And as I learned, as I've progressed in this career here, again, there's not good or bad. It's just different.
Right.
Different people have different needs and things like that. And for me, I needed to get more involved in something directly, more detailed than kind of a general overall, what you see in banking. The other problem with a bank loan officer is you've got all the responsibility but no authority.
Yes.
Because all the decisions are made on a committee level or a sign-off basis.
Is that the underwriter segment, Greg, that is the wizard behind the curtain that everybody hides behind?
Sign-off, go progressively higher. And if, I'm dealing with, multi-million-dollar loans and my lending authority is $100,000. Good luck. And then anything I do for the owners is aggregated with the total relationship. So there's absolutely nothing.
Right.
So the committee will make the decision or the individuals will sign off, but anything goes wrong, it's your problem. And that's not where I wanted to be. So that was the reason I decided to switch out of banking into something else.
Sure.
But it was a great experience. I got to learn, I wasn't very good in college in accounting, but once it was real and you had to deal with it every day, you learned it
very fast. 100%.
You get there really well. One of my stints in banking was as I was reviewing loan agreements, 30-page loan agreements, one right after another, and summarizing them. So I kind of lost any fear of loan documents or legal documents.
Yeah.
The workout division showed me what it's like to be on the other side of the counter, which I had to use probably 3 years into my career at American Phoenix. First 3 years, we were doing wonderful. We were basically just mixing rubber for the tire industry.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. I mean, we're a former tire facility. We have massive sized mixers. Our largest mixers are 620 liters, which is about 1,200 pounds a batch. Every 3 minutes they kick out. So we were built for, quantity. But it went well for 3 years. But then there was a slowdown in the economy, the dot-com crash in 2000. And the problem was that we only had one industry, and that was the tire companies.
Yep.
In the year 2000, I think we serviced 27 different tire plants that year.
No kidding.
It was go crazy. When the economy dropped, we were one industry, and when that industry, we represented their overflow, their emergency, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, a 5% drop in them eliminates us, and that's what happened. So from about 2001 through 2007, we were making adjustments, trying to change, trying to diversify, and all that kind of stuff. And those are pretty rough years.
Big time.
It was pretty much, I felt like a drowning man.
Yeah.
You would, every once in a while,
exhausting.
Pop up to the surface, grab a breath of air, and be shoved down again.
Yeah.
And that was about 7 years worth of work. And the biggest problem we had is when we served the tire companies, they would provide the recipes and they would provide the materials.
And you guys would do the blending and
we had
right.
the labor and we had the equipment.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was but with the labor and equipment, the raw material suppliers didn't know us from Adam. We were just a drop ship destination. Right. So when we tried to make the conversion into others that were not in the tire industry, and a lot of them were foreign-based companies that were coming over here. They wanted a quick start in the U.S. market. They wanted a cheap start, and mixing is not cheap. I mean, the equipment is massive. The infrastructure is massive around it. So the story would be they'd come in and they'd be honest with us. They'd say, 3 years from now, we won't need you because we'll put in our own mixing. That's only happened once in all my 25, almost 26 years here, is that they ever put in their own mixing. It just
is that right? Interesting.
It's a lot of expense, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of know-how.
Right.
It
sounds good. It sounds good on paper.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you look at what you got to put in for
100%.
how little rubber you're putting out, it really doesn't make sense.
Yep.
So we look
not
at
unlike the packaging space where somebody kind of always talks about, we're going to buy our own equipment, we're going to put this together, we're going to make our own film, we're going to do it. Right. Okay. Yep. Right. Knock yourself out. Sounds
so
great.
That's how we grew. We grew with a lot of these companies that had major needs, generally in the tire, the retread, the belt, the track businesses, things like that.
Interesting.
Was the big volume users of rubber.
Right.
So where we sit in this marketplace, there's probably, I'd say about 100 different locations that can mix rubber in North America. And we're probably one of the top 3 in the ability to create volume. I'm not saying the best 3 or anything like that.
I get it.
Size of the operation and what we do. So we have always kind of tended to go in that direction. Eventually we did start bringing some people on. And the biggest challenge is because, if you sell rubber for $1.25, all in, materials and everything, the materials are $1.
Yeah.
Everything else, from your direct expenses, your indirect expenses, your profit, is that quarter.
Yeah.
If you can't buy that dollar right, particularly on a volume operation, you're can't be in business.
Yeah, I know.
And that was our biggest problem as we're trying to break through. We would bring people in when they were traveling through Minneapolis and talk to them and all that. And they'd give you a list price. Well, when you're a volume mixer, you're not paying list. And it's the chicken and the egg. If I had the volume, I could get, So eventually we had some good suppliers that took a shot at us, saw the facility, saw the potential of what we had there, because we probably have the single largest mixing facility in North America outside of the tire industry. Tire companies themselves.
Yeah, right.
And eventually we started bringing in some of these customers and we really started to take off. And the interesting thing is our go-go years were during the 2007, 2008 recession. We were doubling our size every year.
That's so fascinating. Yeah.
So, and nobody could understand why, but we were just, again, they were looking for a solution. We were there. It wasn't.
You were nimble, you were agile, you were willing to do new things. And I mean, that's really what we try to teach any of our, in our world. And I think you're nailing it on the head. You have to be adaptable. You have to be agile. You have to be willing to try different things. I mean, if there's anything that I'm seeing out there, and I digress here, but, we need as an economy, we need as an industry to be nimble, and we can't be set in our ways. And, well, it's the way it's always been done, Sam. Well, it doesn't work like that now. When you're desperate and you have to be creative, great things can happen. But so many times we just, and it just drives me crazy.
What's that phrase? Necessity is the mother of all invention, and it's true.
Big time.
I mean, by nature, I'm a perfectionist type of individual, can't have enough information, all that type of stuff. It didn't take me long to figure out that that doesn't work. By the time you get perfect information, if there is such a thing, it's old information and it doesn't do any good anymore. So
exactly.
I think what I had to learn and adapt to is that you get a good amount of information. You consult with the people that you trust. You make a decision, but don't get wed to that decision. I mean, you go with it because you gotta, and then be ready to pivot.
Have to be.
Just, as things happen, you just got to be able to ready to, change your plan. We got pretty good at that. And what the strengths were, what allowed us to succeed was obviously the pricing. We were lower than most of our competitors, a lot because we didn't have any overhead. I told you about the original structure of our accounting departments.
Yeah, right.
We have big mixers. I think
so you're efficient.
Very efficient. It's the same staffing on a mixer that does 1,200 pounds as it does 400 pounds.
Wow.
So the volumes really, we had an advantage there. But I think the other thing that really did it was quality is kind of we're dealing with Fortune 500 companies. That's a given.
It has to be.
If you don't hit the standards, you don't get to play.
Forget it. Right.
So, I mean, that was a given, but there's really the customer service. And that started with, again, we were forced when we couldn't buy materials properly. I ended up talking to one of our very first largest customers. They were in the belting business. And we explained to them that we had the most efficient mixing operation around. Where we were getting hurt was in our purchasing of raw materials. And a lot of these guys that came over here, they have facilities around the world. So they're buying materials somewhere. And the market is a worldwide market for materials. It shifts from sector to sector depending on pricing. So my theory is if we work together, if you can help us find the best purchasing options for materials with our mixing, we're unbeatable.
And did I hear you right, though, Greg? Sorry to interrupt you, but you shared that with one of your largest customers.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, man.
It was kind of like,
what do you have to lose?
What do I have to lose? Right.
Yeah.
And the byproduct of that was they did help us find between us and then our own, once we got going, our own contacts, we'd meet with our customers, every couple of months to bring in the right, materials that we needed for them. But it was a collaborative effort. I mean, our purchasing group works with their purchasing group hand in glove. The other thing that came out of that is because of that collaboration back and forth, there was an unbelievable amount of trust. I mean, our purchasing people are working with their partner, their purchasing people, our labs working with their labs, our execs are working with their execs. It became just,
that's unstoppable when you get to that point. 100%. 100%.
And we were transparent with our materials, which again, when the prices go up, phrase you're always going to hear is you're gouging me.
Yeah.
Well, when you're telling them this is what we're paying for each material,
right?
And this is what we're charging you for our service, which hasn't changed,
right?
And if you don't like the price of these materials, show us where we can do better.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So there's a trust there too.
Yeah.
So I think that all plays into the customer service aspect of what happens. I mean, what we believe is that the customer they're number one, they pay the bills. I mean, so we will bend over backwards to do whatever they want us to do.
You mentioned two things there that are really, first of all, it's something that's lacking in this world is the partnership part. And I see it in my world from packaging, whether it be manufacturing, distribution, whatever. And you also mentioned customer service, which, oh my goodness. I mean, talk about the hot buttons, but partnership first. I'm amazed at how many companies, I'd love your take on this because that's a bit of an odd stretch in the fact that you guys openly said, hey, we want to, here's where we're at. We need, and basically you created a partnership.
Right.
And partnerships are so powerful when it's like, I got nothing to lose. We need you, you need us, let's work together. Right. And that really becomes a powerful thing. And so many in the packaging space, my world, they're like, oh, no, it sounds good. But when it comes to, oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't tell us. And it's sort of like, man, we're missing out on opportunities because true partnership is, look, where do you need to be? Or what's your pain point? What's happening that you're getting this pressure? Why are you looking? What do you need? And if we know those things from a partner standpoint, we're not here to exploit anything. We're here to help that.
Prove it.
Yeah, prove it. And again, do something here that's going to benefit everybody. But so many in this space are, oh God, don't want to say that because they'll think we're weak. We'll think we're lacking. I think it's just the opposite. I think it's a very powerful position to be in that really separates companies going, hey, this is what we're good at, but you have to let me in. And by the way, send me an NDA, send me what you need so you feel comfortable, but you got to share with me here. And if you keep it close to the vest, it's not going to work. It's not a partnership.
I believe you got to, every product has a supply chain, right?
Yeah. Right.
It starts with the guys who are digging the raw materials out of the ground all the way to the guy who ships the product and the consumer. The supply chain is what's important.
Big time.
So anywhere along the line, if you have one weak link there, you don't have anything. And
correct.
I think too often what you're finding is the big companies are pushing expenses down on the little guy to the point where they can't make it anymore.
Yep.
And that's where I think my belief is that your job is to understand the whole link as best as you can to help improve the whole chain. That's the only way we all make money, is if the chain is as efficient as possible.
Exactly.
We've had situations with some of our large customers back on the packaging side, which we'll talk about later.
Sure.
They have a problem and they will put in a solution. The solution, however, then impacts my business and makes it more expensive, right?
Right.
Now, they don't mean anything by it. They just aren't used to thinking through the whole chain.
Right.
It's my job then to get back to them immediately as soon as I see this is happening and say, guys, that's great that you want to do this and this because you can save $1 over here. But if it costs me $2, we're losing as a chain.
Right.
But I got to give them that information so they can make the proper decision as quickly as possible.
Right. And getting with the important thing, sorry to interrupt you, but the other part of this, and I think it's really important as well, is talking with decision makers, those that understand this piece, not Betty the clerk or somebody that passes himself off as, oh yeah, I'm definitely in charge of this. But really and truly, like you said, if you're having a conversation with a customer, they need to understand that, yes, you want to do this on your end to save $1, but it's going to affect over here. And by the way, that's going to end up in your bottom line. Right. And it's like, okay, that's right. Okay. But all too often it's like, Betty will handle it. Betty will deal with it. And it's like, that's not going to be successful.
You had made a good point. Talking with decision makers. Now, when you're working with Fortune 500 companies, it's difficult to do that. There's silos. Unfortunately, we deal with the purchasing group because we're a spend, right?
Yeah.
But we're also definitely working with the production folks because our product is going into their product.
Yeah.
And there's always a quality aspect of everything you do.
Yep.
So you've got 3 different groups that are interested in what we do, but we're owned by the purchasing group. And for the most part, purchasing has one hammer, and that is lower your prices, right? The problem is that it leads to unintended consequences down the line. They got to understand what we do and what the ramifications are during that whole chain type of thing.
Big time.
So it's hard. The hardest thing we have to do is to get to the right person who can
digest that.
Right, and has authority to kind of disseminate it amongst the 3 different silos, if you will, out there.
Did you find at all, and again, just an off riff, I remember when I got into this business a long, long time ago, it was the purchasing department that really held all the cards.
Yes.
We ever walk in and I would deal with the Hoover Company or Moen Faucets or whoever it was, and by God, they had a buyer for metal. They had a buyer for packaging, and that guy traveled and saw the corrugated plants, and but those guys were the ones that handled the freight, they handled the cost, they handled everything through. But nowadays we seem to, and I don't know what it's like in your space, but in my world, they've kind of replaced those people with a lower cost. Sometimes a computer terminal just tells Betty what to order. That's a difficult thing when you're trying to, like, you guys are doing something that's going to ultimately cost you a lot more money, but who do I talk to? Well, Betty's the buyer.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, what we're finding out is a lot of these companies are getting young people, and I'm not against young people, believe me.
No. I heard that
there's
right.
Some fabulous young people out there. but they still need experience.
Big
You
time.
bring these people in, and these purchasing people have never been in a plant. I mean, they have no idea what you're doing.
Yep.
And so their solutions that they're suggesting really don't make any sense.
Right.
But they don't know any better because
I know.
they have not. So we spend a lot of time trying to educate our purchasing people as best we can. I mean, because they're coming in green. They don't, and the better they understand the industry, the better they are for their employer and the better they are for us. The problem is they flip over about every 2 to 3 years.
I was just gonna say that, and it's interesting as a side note, in this, the young crowd, like we're talking about. Me too. I'm not against anybody.
No.
The point is that they digest information. They learn differently than you and me.
Yep.
And we have to serve up this information the way they consume information. And sometimes it's mobile. Sometimes it's a video on their phone. Sometimes it's something but that's an ongoing challenge, because if we want to somehow help them understand that, ultimately the end game is going to cost them more money or whatever it is,
right,
that's a challenge too. Do you agree?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And I got to look at myself. I mean, I know how I learn. Okay.
Yep.
But I forget everybody doesn't learn that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, I want to talk it out. I do not want to get on a screen and type it out. One, I can't type, but so it's really slow and painful, but they're raised on that. I mean, the communication is back and forth like this. And and I'm okay with that. That has its place in my mind anyway. The place is if you need a quick note, a quick yes or no or something like that. But if it goes more than 2 or 3 times back and forth, pick up a phone and talk.
100%.
Because
100%.
You're missing a lot of nuance in what's going on.
That's well put. I hope you like this content. If you want more of it, I put together a Specialized Packaging Alliance, a group of packaging professionals that are in different facets of this industry. We have webinars, we have meetings. The idea is to share information about this great industry of packaging, whether that be from the sales side of things to the marketing, even to the end users. My point with this is I'd love to have you join us, the Specialized Packaging Alliance. Check out the link below to learn more. Thanks. Well, you also touched on something which I think is also lacking. We talked partnership, but customer service. You want to talk about, I'd love your take on this too. Come on, we have got to do better at the customer service level. I don't care what industry it is, whether it's airline tickets or rubber compounding or packaging or specialized packaging. Please, get back to people, answer a call, return an email, tell somebody you got their order or message. That is, I don't know where that fell off the turnip truck here, Greg, but I mean, it seems like suddenly that's like, you know what, we'll get to you tomorrow or next week maybe, because it's a Friday. Like, what? Somebody's business is at stake here.
Well, I think for a lot of, particularly on the retail side of things, I think it's better in the industrial side a little bit, because you're not dealing with as many numbers of customer service calls, if you will, right? But I think between the shortage of people out there and the fact that people don't stick around for more than, I had a son who came out of college. He had a 2-year job where he got a CPA exam, and then he spent 9 months with 2 companies. He never even went. This was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
He was never in the office. He never met anybody in person.
Right.
But 9 months here, 9 months next one, and now he's on to the next one. Well, how do you train people when you're jumping that fast? That's part of the problem. But I think the customer service side is really important. And I think people got to realize is that the customer is king, really is. And you'll do whatever you can for them. We had a situation where polymers or rubber was a very in short supply at a period of time. I'm not going to go into the detail why. We told this particular customer that we don't see the ability to buy rubber for the next quarter. The customer read that as it's going to get expensive. Not that it's short, but so they blew through their quarterly supply of rubber in 2 months, and we're looking for more, right? And we became a terrible supplier because we didn't have more. Along that lines, how thoughts come to you at weird times, in the shower where you wake up.
Exactly.
We had one of those aha moments, and what the polymers that we use, you usually use 2 different types. You use a synthetic or natural rubber, and then use a butyl rubber to support it. So it dawned on me that we were 2 synthetic rubbers. We were short on those rubbers. So I called my customer and said, listen, why don't you check with my competition? Because we're short, let's call it 1502 grade rubber.
Yeah, right.
But we have a boatload of butyl rubber. We made a buy a year before, and we were just,
we're good.
Okay. Sure enough, they didn't have butyl. We didn't have 1502. They had 1502.
Perfect.
So I suggested to them that what we do is it's about 2 synthetic rubbers to 1 butyl. We'll buy 2 of their trucks, or, on that proportion, and we'll each be able to produce for them. Well, my competitor came back to them and said, we won't do that. No, they're going to have to sell us the butyl rubber in order for us to, make the product. So what do you do in a situation like that?
Yeah,
It's our idea, and we're not getting anything out of it. We did it. I mean, we sold it at our cost so that our customer could get the rubber. Now, in the short term, we lost on some sales. Hopefully, in the long term, they understood where our
alliance was. Yeah, exactly.
It was the customer.
Sure. And the other thing too with that, Greg, is you mentioned something, and it's sad, but you know this top of mind because you went through this on how you really showed your allegiance to your customer. But on the flip side, we also have to be able to document this. Make sure that people understand. And I don't know what the answer. It's just a comment.
Right.
I just but we have to either remind our team, remind the customer, or somehow in some way recap this, saying, just so you know, Mr. Customer, this is what we did for you. Now, whether they appreciate it or not isn't, but at least you guys have kind of put that and document it, because it's all too often in this day and age. It's like, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, if you don't document this, this really and truly could have been a complete death knell for your client, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's those kind of things that are just, it's so telling when you look at a company willing to do that and willing to look at the big picture and say, you know what, let's just cover our costs. Let's try to help this customer because long term we'll benefit. But good for you guys.
It's still about the customer. I mean, it's and I think because we lived so hand to mouth there for 7 years between 2001 and 2007.
You remember that.
Our guys got really good. I mean, we'd get a phone call and they'd say, we have an emergency. We need rubber, blah, blah, blah. And you said, well, we have the materials here, or we'll have them tomorrow, and they'll be on the road the day after tomorrow. It's not 2 weeks down the road. Maybe we'll fit you into our schedule.
Right.
It doesn't make a difference how busy we are. I mean, we will find a way to put it out. And our guys, when the rubber bell rings, they step up. I mean, they come in and they put in the overtime, and we do whatever it takes to get the rubber out. And it's a culture that it's not intentional that we did this, but it grew organically because of the need we had, and it's still there today.
Would you say that that's, and one of the questions I have for you too, but this isn't necessarily, I mean, one of the questions is what's the real sweet spot in the rubber compounding, but you also mentioned something here that's really critical as well, is the fact that you guys are naturally really, really good, like you said, of reacting. If somebody comes in and says, hey, it's a 911, we got a problem here, they instinctively don't run, they instinctively dig in and they go, okay, what's the deal? What do we need? And I just think that, talk about a partnership. I mean, goodness gracious, that to me is just it right there.
And you almost have to be, because our industry, if you're dealing with the size of customers we're doing, I've got 3 levels of business, if you will. The first one is your ongoing customer that's taken month after month, week after week, day after day. Then you've got the the project mixing.
Right. Yep.
This is when a customer takes down one of his own mixers, and it's going to be 30, 45 days between they taking it down and they're getting the new one installed and tested out and all that stuff. But it's known ahead of time. And then you've got the emergency mixing, where they have a mixer that went down and they have a ticket to make. And when you've got a tire plant that puts out 40,000 tires in a day, it doesn't take long to chew through rubber. So, I mean, it is an immediate emergency.
Right.
And you got to be able to react to that too.
So do you have that out there, or is it something that your reps or their messaging carries through, that you guys have this kind of 911 program, if you will? Because it's brilliant if you do.
We've dealt with all the major guys in that industry, all the big players long enough.
Yeah.
I mean, we started with them 30 some years ago. So
Right.
they've watched us over the years and they've seen that that's what we are capable of doing.
Right.
And the other thing they see is how easy it is to work with us. We
Yeah.
don't throw obstacles in front of people. We try to knock those down to make
Right.
it easier to buy from us, to
Right.
order from us, to take product from us,
Right.
or problems. I mean, when you're doing that kind of volume, you're going to have issues. I mean, when I came in as a rookie into this, industry, I remember saying, well, how tough can this be? You've got this mixer has a certain size cavity. It holds
Right.
this much rubber. You follow the recipe, you drop
Oh,
it
yeah.
in there.
Yep.
You run it for 3 minutes, you kick it out the back end. What can go wrong? Well, rubber is a very interesting material. I mean, it depends on the humidity. It depends on
Sure.
the season. We have different recipes for different seasons because of the humidity levels.
Right.
Slight variations in what you're mixing. Do you have a cold mixer or do you got a warm mixer? I mean,
Mm.
there's so many variables in mixing rubber. A lot can go wrong. There are issues that pop up, but the question is do you own up to your problems? Do you got to be honest with the guy saying, hey, we had a problem with this. Let's figure out what we got to do to fix it. And too many people want to hide that type of stuff.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, you mentioned a
They feel
couple of
embarrassed.
things. Exactly. And you know what? In this day and age, it's interesting. Through this podcast, I've been able to meet some very, very cool and work with some very cool companies. And one of the things that stands out right now as we're talking and getting to know each other even more, you guys are very comfortable in your own skin. You guys are very comfortable going, you know what? Here's where we fit. This is what we do. These are the things we do very, very well. If there's an issue, God forbid there's an issue, but if there is, I'd rather know about it and communicate it than stick our head in the sand and wait till next week and go. And I see all too often in my space, in the packaging side of things, Specialized, where people are like, nah, we'll wait till next week and we tell Greg. We'll wait till we're going to be late.
Something magically is going to get better. Right?
Exactly. Like there's some big Amazon up in the sky that's going to click and everything's going to be, no, let's get ahead of this now. Yeah.
And they understand. I mean, the toughest people for us to work with, people that don't mix their own rubber, because they don't understand all the things that can go wrong.
Yep.
They think like I did when I was a rookie in the league.
Yep.
And those are the tough ones because it's less understanding. But I mean, the principle holds true when you're dealing with your creditors, as your customers. And that's where I really came into play. That's the first 3 years I was at American Phoenix. I was just there. I mean, I didn't feel like I contributed much. I'm in the learning phase and all that stuff. But when the economy dropped and we lost, we went from 270 employees down to 30 in 9 months.
Yep.
That's how bad things felt. And now you got to sort of hang on for 7 years as you're rebuilding and you're doing your thing. So for me, it was, that's where the workout experience came in. As being on the other side of the table, as being the creditor, what you don't want to hear is the check's in the mail and it never shows up. You don't want to hear when it's too late, when you're not making payroll, that you have a problem.
Yeah.
You need to know this stuff earlier so that you can react to it and deal with the problem. If you don't be honest with these people and do stuff, it puts them in a bad box. Yeah. And now they resent you for it. So it goes both ways. So, we deal with our creditors in a way that when what we tell them we can do. If we can't do it, we'll tell them we can't do it.
Right.
And we got a lot of mileage out of that. I mean, the trust level with a lot of our suppliers was incredible in those days.
Well, that's where the connection with Alex, even way back when, was brilliant, because it was, the fact that it's like instinctively he knew in some way, shape, or form that, your skill set, yes, you were learning a new industry, but your skill set, your bread and butter may come in handy someday.
No.
And it certainly did.
And it's almost like kismet that something like that happened. I mean, and again, that type of relationship, because we're different people, and Alex is 15 years older than me and I'm not a young guy.
That's pretty cool.
It's a great relationship, but to get there, you got to go through a lot of pain.
Oh, yeah.
You don't really know an organization, a person, until you go through some tough times with them.
100%.
And so that's evolved. I got to be one of the luckiest guys that ever walked the face of the earth.
I was going to say, he sounds like a real Spitfire that I want to meet someday when I'm rolling through, because he's the kind of guy. He's
got an open invite. You want to start a facility here or anything, just give me a call. You're good.
Yeah.
But that's enriched my life. I mean, all these different adventures that we've been on is incredible.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, let's segue into that custom weighing and blending, because I want to make sure we hit that.
Yep.
That's something which is interesting too. It's something that's sort of that kind of came about It wasn't your meat and potatoes,
No.
but it was something, and that's where I really love the entrepreneurial spirit of what you guys are doing, because that was something that's tell us how that kind of came about, because it's a custom blending and weighing of a recipe almost, correct?
Right,
Like baking
definitely.
a cake.
Definitely. I've been with the company for 2 years, and one of the senior purchasing agents at one of the big tire companies gave me a call and said, first of all, maybe I should lay out how this all works. So when you're mixing rubber, basically about 55% of it is the polymer or the rubber, natural synthetic. About 25% is a filler, generally carbon black. And carbon black is the same stuff you'll find in your toner cartridge to get what that material is. And then you'll have maybe 15% oil and maybe 10%, 15% of powders, dry chemicals. Not necessarily powder. It could be pastils. It could be, whatever.
Yeah.
But in that, there's about 40 different chemicals that the industry uses that are what they've referred to as small weighment. Now, a lot of tire plants, because of the size they are, if it's a high volume, they'll use silos and feed it directly into their mixers. So this is what they refer to, another way of stating what we do as small weighments. But they'll take combinations of their 40 chemicals. You can have anywhere from just a single chemical in a bag to maybe 8 or 9 different chemicals in a bag. And it's all customized. I mean, there's at least a dozen components to a tire, and different grades of tires, different needs, and all this stuff. So we're probably dealing with maybe 200 to 300 SKUs in the chemical packages that we put together, and it is a package.
Yeah.
So she called and she said, "Have you guys ever thought building these chemical packages using automated machinery?" Now, the automated machinery was key because up to that point, it was the Stone Ages. I mean, you'd sit there
hand scoop
with a scale on the table, with a recipe hanging here, and you'd surround yourself with the 7 or 8 chemicals you're dealing with scoops and into the bucket.
Exactly.
And this guy would do this for 8 to 12 hours a day.
I've seen that. I know. Right? Yeah.
So what do you think the quality of that is after?
I know.
So that was the real issue. The company they were looking for an option that was mechanized so they could assure that they have the exact amounts time after time, and the repeatability is huge in the rubber industry.
Yeah.
So her question was, you do this. I mean, you do the same thing we do. We weigh up the chemicals and all that stuff. Have you ever thought of doing that using equipment and then doing it as a service? And my comment was, no, should we? And she said, yeah, you may want to look at that. Wow. So we ended up going down to Kentucky. We found a firm. We bought some equipment. Again, I'm a year and a half into this thing. I couldn't tell you the difference between a mill and a Banbury at that point.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But I got my guys that are my engineers and my plant manager and everything. We're down there looking at this equipment, and we bought a line and we set it up in our facility in Eau Claire because we need the service also.
Yeah, right.
As we were going through this process, we were realizing that these guys were good software engineers. Oh, by the way, when we looked at the equipment, we watched it weigh rice. Now,
a little different than
has to be the most easiest thing to weigh because
exactly.
It's a hard pellet. It's uniform in size. There's no powders. I mean,
no.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't weigh rice.
Yes.
We weigh everything other than rice.
Right. Like baking powder.
You got it. Or powders that'll drift up as much as drift down. I mean, it's interesting. So bought this line. And as we were setting it up and we were using it, we were realizing multiple physical problems with the equipment. An example would be is the hoppers. The design of the hopper was like an upside down house.
Right.
Well, this angle, what happened is some of these materials, because they're sticky, it would arc inside.
Oh, yeah.
So it's full up here, but nothing's coming out down here.
Right.
And it's referred to the angle of repose. So you got to steepen it so it goes down.
Correct.
You got to condition the bags at times. I mean, there's a lot of things that weren't well thought through. I was fortunate enough to inherit a bunch of the former Uniroyal mechanics. We have 40,000, 50,000 square foot metal shop, fabricating shop. And these guys are great. I mean, these guys can fix anything.
Yeah.
They're of that era, right?
Invaluable.
And so we would throw the problem at them. They'd get out there, bang some things around, do this, that, and they'd set it in here, readjust it, and make it work. And then we'd then turn around and tell our vendor that you got a problem with your angle of repose, and this is the solution, and this is where you went. Well, this went on and on for about a year, and we're giving these guys all these R&D ideas.
You're fixing their problem.
You got it. And we're still paying an exorbitant amount of money for this equipment.
Right.
And at that point, we decided, why are we doing this? I mean, we're capable of building this equipment, and the programming isn't that difficult, really. And so we started developing our own lines. So we ended up buying one of those custom lines, and from that point forward, we built our own equipment.
How about that? So, is that part of now this is your equipment now in-house? Do you sell the equipment now, or this is your secret sauce, your thing that you guys have come?
We've never looked at it as secret sauce or anything like that. I mean, I think we're a bit, we're used to providing services. That's what we do in the rubber mixing. So it was a natural for us to provide that service.
Right.
We looked at the equipment. We had been asked to provide equipment at one time. One of the big tire companies had asked us to provide the service at one of their plants. Before we could get there, they shut the plant down.
Oh.
2 years later, we got asked to do one of their other plants. By the time we got around to it, they shut that one down. And by the third plant they talked to us about, they said, we really don't want a service. We want to buy the equipment.
Right.
So we actually went down the line of considering that, and we were going to go through with it, but it went with another option.
Whatever. It is what it is. But it sounds like, and if I hear you correctly, because I've been in several of those places where it was literally a scoop, and I get that, like baking a cake, and it's nasty. It is not for the faint of heart. It really is nasty, and for you guys to have automated or even semi-automated or actually automated that process, that's absolutely brilliant. I've been through factories overseas and rubber companies overseas. They've never even seen anything like that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Do you see that as a real kind of niche that you guys are going to plan to exploit over the years, so to speak?
Yeah, we're hoping to. I mean, again, we've always looked at ourselves in the rubber world, right? So it's natural for us, and it was born out of that, in that industry. But I mean, we have had suppliers now come to us and say, hey, can you break down a super sack into smaller bags for us and that kind of stuff. And so we have dabbled with it. I think we are interested in exploring other opportunities. Again, our equipment is really good for multiple chemicals in a single a single bag.
Yeah.
The lines are set up for that. Doesn't mean we can't do a single chemical.
Right.
But I don't know if the value is as much as there is multiple chemicals in a container.
Oh, that's fascinating. I think that and again, that truly is the American spirit as well. That truly is just kind of listening, going like, just like you said, should we, when this lady reaches out, should we think of that? Like I've told our kids, and I'm sure you have as well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to really be successful. Just listen and react and kind of plan and get good counsel and all that stuff. But goodness gracious, do something. And you're sitting on a gold mine. Yeah. Exactly. I love that.
And that's what it is. I mean, it's all a learning experience. I would call our lines, it's not fully automated. We still have an operator. The operator basically starts the bucket down the line. He puts the low melt plastic bag in it, sends it down, and then it comes back on the backside on a return to him, takes it out, seals it, puts it in the bin. The holy grail would be as a fully automated line where that guy doesn't have to be there. And you only need a guy up top filling the hoppers, right? But what we found is, and anybody out there that has a better solution, and again, we deal with a real specialized bag, at least in the rubber industry, because it's low melt, right? Yeah. Because it's all going into the mixer.
Yeah.
Little rubbery, it's a difficult bag to handle.
Sure.
But I've been looking for solutions for the last 10 years. We've tried some things. I've watched some equipment very closely. I was just at a plant about 2 months ago, and I was watching their operation, and they have this massive piece of equipment that does what we do, fully automated.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the time it takes to form the bag, fill the bag, and seal the bag, we're better off doing it by hand. It's still, we can do it at half the speed.
Yep. And, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I can envision, because I see that as well. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I look for off the record, we'll talk about this, because that's my world. But it's interesting because a lot of companies come to us and say, we're going to buy our own machine.
Right.
You can sell us roll stock and we're going to do all this ourselves. Now, on paper, which I believe that's kind of what you were talking about, on paper, that sounds great. But like you said, if you look at the scrap and the time and the amount of it takes to bend and form, where you could just be filling preformed pouches, bang, 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 bang. It's a no-brainer. But again, it's you have to look at the overall, the overall big picture, and yeah, it's fascinating.
One of my early contacts when we were doing this, he told me two things. He said, "Greg, I could do this in my garage," kind of half heart, tongue in cheek. Right. I said, "Go ahead and try it."
Yeah.
Again, because of the different types of powders you're dealing with, the materials and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot more complicated than it appears.
Yep.
But he did say that because we weren't the only ones that were doing this at the time. The tire company had contacted several companies, and three of us bit. Okay. I didn't know this at the time, nor did it matter. I mean, you just put your best foot forward.
100%. Got it.
And as it turned out, what he explained to me is we kept winning more and more plants with this company. Whenever they come up to bid, because we could do it the most efficiently and the service levels and everything else. We ended up buying out one other company that did the service down in our lot in Oklahoma, was purchased by us. The other thing he told me is between the three of us, he said, it's almost like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? So one's too hot, one's too cold, it's right in the middle. And he said, you've got the right combination of automation and manual to be the most efficient in what you do.
Yep.
And I still believe that's the case to this day. I've looked at several different solutions and lines. And again, it all comes down to that one problem is the time it takes to form, fill, and seal a bag.
Big time.
It just hasn't caught up with the rest of it yet.
It's a unique material, Greg.
Yes,
I mean, that
unique.
material is not something you can consistently just bend and slice and bend and seal. It's a very, very stretchy and gooey. And if it's too hot, it gets like, ugh. But if it's done effectively, I totally see where you're going with that. And absolutely.
I'm still looking for a solution. I'd be happy to, if someone has that.
I'm on it.
I would love to.
You and I will talk. You and I will talk after the record. I have no idea where this will go, but you know what? It wasn't the intention, but let's give it a whirl. You never know.
That's why we talk.
100%. Well, let's land a plane because I could talk to you forever. Okay. But I mean, one of the things that's really important is kind of the big picture here. Let's talk about where you see American Phoenix in 5-10 years. Where's your gut say that this is going and headed, and how can I just love to give you that opportunity to speak out and look out to the crystal ball.
Basically, we have the two divisions. One is the mixing and one's the chemical division, or the bagging operations. And I kind of, it's hard to say by sales or whatever level. So I go down to employees. Okay. Yeah. So historically, half of our employees have been in the mixing side, half have been in the packaging side. So we have two distinct sides. On the mixing side, there are not a lot of massive companies out there that, we know pretty much who they are.
Yeah.
So for us to grow, and the problem with the industry is the consolidation of the industry, both from a mixing side, like people like us, the consolidation has been hot and heavy the last 15, 20 years.
Yep.
And then the customers. You think you've diversified, and before you know it, one of the big boys have bought out two of your customers.
Yeah.
Now you're back to where you were before, So we've been through that cycle a few times, and what we've discovered we need to do is we need to go after the next tier down. And I don't mean in a negative way. I mean someone who doesn't quite use the volumes that the giants use, right? But that means different equipment, different services, and everything else. And so I think where we're going and we've been pretty much under the radar. We don't advertise. We don't do much of anything. You made a comment that my social profile is non-existent, and it is non-existent. Okay.
Sorry.
And that's by choice. And besides, I don't know what I'm doing anyway. If I was,
you were on that email, Greg. Jeez, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I was sending true. That off to. Okay,
it's true. But we're we're going to go out in the world finally a little bit now,
Yeah.
and go after some things we haven't before, and we're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and we're going to
Yeah.
get involved in things. But what I'm coming to realize, and something that hit home, is this networking thing. This, don't do it. You're not a lone wolf. If I want to get into this business, we can do a lot of it. But why should I go in there? By the way, I'm considered a giant, okay, I mean, in the industry just because of our size.
Yeah, sure.
And the little guys are afraid of us, right? And rightfully so. I mean, I can see their fear. But what I'd like to do is why should I go out and spend a lot of money putting in a lot of special equipment when there's 30 guys out there that already have that equipment and can do it?
100%.
What I'm going to do is if I did that, I'm going to spend a lot of money and I'm going to just destroy the market and the pricing.
Yep.
So why not use what's already out there?
Yep.
And why not use their expertise? And why not help each other out?
100%.
So for us, I think the future of our mixing business is to team up with half a dozen of guys that do smaller quantities in different niches that we're not involved in.
Yep.
And then work together to help each other out. I mean,
it's brilliant.
And they run across some higher volume needs. They can't compete with us. So we might as well work together. And I can't compete with them on some of these other things they do. So let's pool the resources. I can help them. They can help us. And we're all going to make out.
Well, and what you said there is so spot on. In this day and age now, it's about forming communities. Yep. And this is exactly what you're talking about. Because like you said, you could go in there and club everybody to death, but what good's that going to do?
No.
This would give you maximum leverage together.
Right.
And that's something that's truly missing out there are companies that think like this, Greg. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you. This is, if we want to talk about, bringing back American manufacturing and doing things that are actually going to benefit us as a economy and nation, we got to think like this. We can't just be Greg over here and David over here and Sally over there and everybody fight over the same slice of pie.
Right.
Let's get our heads together and say, look, let's do this. I don't want to put you out of business and I don't want to necessarily be in your bandbox.
Right.
Let's talk this out. And I remember seeing that and reading that in your bio. And I was like, it's so profound. It's so simple, yet it's so profound. There's nothing here that says you can't form a community and get people together. Everybody to talk it out. What are you good at, Bob? What are you good at, say, David? What can you, and together.
And it's information. It's not just, I need you to help me mix smaller stuff or this, or they need,
right.
I've got buying power that they may not have.
Yep.
I've run across, as an industry, we're not a favored industry to the insurance company, by the way. If U.S. has an explosion risk, a fire risk, all these other things, you deal with chemicals and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to get reasonable insurance. But if you've got some ends with some companies that, some insurance companies that will work with our industry, I can share that with some of, people. It goes beyond just what you originally think. There's a lot of other things you can help each other out with that are peripheral to what your main business is.
You said something, and this is where it kind of came full circle for me, just as you were describing that, is back to your early days with the company, when you had to own up with that, whoever that was, the supplier, and say, look, I need some help here. My buying power is not what, not what it is now or whatever. Isn't it interesting that here we are, 38 years later or whatever it is, Greg, that it's kind of come full circle.
Right.
Where you're talking the same thing, where you could actually help the smaller guy and say, you know what, as an industry, we could actually form something, an alliance together and put something together that truly would be a game changer for the next 25 years or more.
Right. And they don't have, we are bigger than them. We have resources and, we probably have a bigger advertising budget and all that. So I can see us when we're out there, when we finally decide to go out into the world, like most companies, we're going to run across a lot of things we can't handle. And I'd be happy to steer those to the right people. It's just, why waste all those resources when they're already there?
Man, that's a breath of fresh air, because I see a lot of private equity in the packaging space that'll buy out these companies left and right. And I get that. And somebody, makes money on that transaction, but then they leave the company for dead.
did.
And then I see a lot of this sort of decline and sort of, but what you're talking about is let's not do that. Let's not make this a carcass. Let's get ourselves together here. And I could talk it. And by the way, I could see you at a trade show with 6 or 7 of these partner companies all sharing in the cost and be there and be able to say, look what we can do.
Right.
You want to talk about in this day and age where somebody is looking to get it to somebody that can handle all the different types of business that they need, it would be a showstopper.
Well, and you talk about that collaboration early on. And when you mentioned that, I thought back to those days.
Yeah.
One of our key suppliers for chemicals, I remember being in a meeting. It was the day before Thanksgiving. He was going to come out and visit our plant. This was right in the middle when we were just suffering mightily in those early 2000s.
That dreaded, I would like to stop by.
Yeah. And he was going to go visit our plant, but he informed me that maybe we should meet at a hotel by the airport because if he doesn't get on, and there's a storm coming into Minneapolis.
Of course.
So
right.
He didn't get home for Thanksgiving the next day. His marriage was on the line. So he said, could we meet in a hotel and just talk, right? I remember walking in that meeting and we're sitting there, me and our purchasing agent, and we sit there across from him and we're staring at our shoes because we're past due. We're not making payments on time. We're embarrassed about this whole thing. And the first thing out of his mouth was, why aren't you buying more from us? We kind of look up at him and go, well, because, we're 45 days past due or whatever it was. Why would we expect you to just let me worry about that?
How about that?
And he carried us and he helped us and he worked with us. And what it eventually did was it built both of our businesses,
Big
not just mine. Because what it ended up happening is because of our volumes, and once we got the traction, we got going, then he could buy bigger volumes.
Correct.
And now he had better pricing for his other customers.
Yep.
So we grew together.
Yeah.
And to this day, we have an unbelievable relationship with that company.
That is, I love that. That actually sent chills up my spine because that's so much that's missing out there. Is everybody is kind of like their own little, this is mine, this is yours, whatever it is. But talk about, having the foresight to sit down and say, don't worry about that. I'll get you there. That's just, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah,
hey, man.
It's a people business.
100%. And you touched on so many great things, Greg, that I can't wait to come out. Let's, I will come out and see you. I can't wait.
You are more than welcome.
I appreciate it. Cause and goodness gracious, you touched on the key things in my world: customer service, partnership, actually owning, and sharing information versus keeping it close to the vest and, kind of thing. And this is really cool for me. I love this kind of setup because I get to learn and I get to share and I get to meet cool people like you. So
you'd be a good banker.
Yeah.
See all these things and how things are made.
Exactly. I'll hold off on that one. I'll hold on. Hi, everyone. It's David Baranek. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to see more, here's another video that you can check out, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Thanks.